The crucifixion inspired him too. In 1951, he painted Christ of St. John on the cross. Its bold perspective, apparently inspired by a dream, reveals the coast of Cadaqués beneath a hovering cross. And with the onset of the Cold War and the nuclear age, another big theme caught his imagination.
Just as Freud had preoccupied Dali earlier in his career, now nuclear physics, the science behind the atom bomb, obsessed him most of all. He was about to enter a new phase as an artist and would soon anoint himself the first painter of the atomic age.
He christened this phase nuclear mysticism and began reworking, some say recycling, his most famous motifs, reflecting how the fabric of life is made up of moving atoms.
Everything jumping and romping in a completely extraordinary eurythmic feeling.
And all your life will be to the rhythm of atomic explosion.
Exactly, one new kind of atomic and nuclear mysticism.
In the 60s and 70s, Dali split his time between his home in Spain, Paris and New York, performing that famous caricature version of himself and continuing to court publicity and controversy.
This is where Dali stayed whenever he was in New York. The rather grand St. Regis Hotel, where he held court, entertained his many admirers and acolytes, and got up to all sorts of incredibly surreal mischief.
His HQ was in the hotel bar, and here, every Sunday evening, crowds would arrive to get a glimpse of the great artist. In the 70s, artist Louis McCoyer befriended him here.
There was a round table that Dali was sitting at with large candelabra lit, and it was very much like a talk show host thing where Dali was the host, and the most famous, the most rich, or the most outrageous person was the one that got to sit next to him next. Anybody who's rich and famous stopped by, the Rolling Stones, the Grateful Dead, you know, you name the people, David Bowie, Andy Warhol was always here. Warhol had at one time made a gift to Dali of a Marilyn lithograph that he had done. So he brought it to Dali.
You gave him one of the Marilyns?
He gave him one of the Marilyns. It was, I would say, 24 inches square, something like that. He didn't think Warhol was a very good painter at all. And Dali promptly put it on the floor, unzipped his fly, and pissed on it.
Well, in front of him?
In front of Warhol, which Warhol didn't mind at all. He thought it was really great. There was a lot of wild stuff. There was a time where we talked about horseshoe crabs because of their shape and because they had these projectiles that look like rhinoceros horns, that I had made helmets for Dali and Gala, actually,
really?
to wear.
Can I model it?
Yes, you're more than happy to put it on.
Which way around does this thing go?
It goes on like this. You just put it on. It has a velvet liner, so you just put your elastic on.
What do you reckon?
We just wore them for the night in the bar, actually, here, and just saw the reactions of people. I've also brought a project that I did with Dali that came to be known the Flying Fried Eggs. Essentially, 3 fried eggs on a hovercraft.
This is a toy, is it? The
hovercraft is a toy, but Dali had fried eggs in many of his paintings, and I brought the idea to him, and we made this toy.
This is great, I love it.
So we made the fried eggs, and we walked them into the lobby, and we walked them from here to the plaza, and created a huge commotion. By the time we got to the plaza, there's probably 400 or 500 people following the eggs. He really was the carrier of surrealism and lived it all the time.
Dali's exhibitionist clowning helped destroy the archetype of the solemn, suffering artist. Come on. Art and artists in the future would be a lot more playful, irreverent, and conspicuous. But Dali wasn't just playing the fool in the final decades of his life. Back home in Spain, he'd been working on his last great project, a monument to that brand of surrealism that had become his life's work.
This is the Dali Theatre Museum in Figueres. You could call it the largest surrealist object in the world. Its design encapsulates lots of Dali's obsessions. The golden statuettes refer to Hollywood, there are eggs, spherical atoms, and the red facade is studded with these bread rolls, which Dali thought were like goosebumps ruffling the building's skin. He wanted everyone who visited his museum to feel like they were walking into a theatrical dream. This place is unbelievable. This is the central courtyard of Dali's Theatre Museum. And I feel like I've walked right into the middle of his brain. Dali once said that he wanted to produce a dream that could also be used as a living room. And this is what he came up with. He hung some pictures on the wall, he created a strange pink fireplace stocked with logs, and in the middle of the room he placed one of his most famous ever inventions, a ravishing pair of red lips that also double up as a sofa. And the view of it is much better from up here. The installation is typical of his work. It's playful, it's witty, it's unexpected, it's irreverent, it's certainly surreal, and most of all, it's very, very sexy.
The museum opened in 1974, and Dali, now in his 70s, painted this ceiling to commemorate what he felt was his legacy. As the managing director of the Gala Salvador Dali Foundation, Juan Manuel Sevillano, explains.
The summing up of a lot of the powerful symbols he created throughout his years. His legacy will be a source of richness, wealth, and well-being for his city. As you can see that there's a rainfall of gold there and all his creations dancing. This somehow leads us to a moment where him and Gala look at the path they will follow towards the afterlife. And somehow Dali comes to terms with the terror that filled his life about dying and moving on.
Is it true that some people, when they come here, they're quite sniffy about the museum?
Some people are, because they come with the wrong expectations. They expect to see a museum, you know, a gallery with square rooms and paintings placed one next to each other with exactly the same separation between them, and a lot of literature under them, which is fine. It is a reasonable expectation. But this place is unreasonable, so you have to brace for what's going to hit you once you walk in through the door.
This was painted quite late on in his career, I think in the 70s.
Absolutely.
Some people are quite dismissive about his later works and see this kind of thing as quite kitsch and almost silly with the big feet and everything. Yeah. Do you think that's unfair?
I think it is. I think he did a whole bunch of things that were not understood back then by his contemporaries, but are now what all our great contemporary artists are doing. He was the first person to understand mass culture and understand mass communication. I think that it is time that we start really understanding how important Dali was for the world of 20th century art and for what has come after.
Dali died in January 1989. He was buried at the centre of the museum, which is now his mausoleum.
When I started this film, I knew that Dali was a really brilliant painter. His early surrealist pictures really are true masterpieces of the 20th century that conjure up all the desires and also anxieties that underpin the modern world. But what I've discovered is that there's so much more to this exuberant Spanish genius. Dali liberated what it meant to be an artist, and he used that wild persona to communicate the ideas of surrealism to a worldwide audience. And just look, Dali left an indelible mark Everything from cinema to painting to jewellery and fashion to design and advertising, even comedy, there isn't much that Dali hasn't changed. As he said himself, "When I paint, the sea roars. The others just splash about in the bath." If you'd like to find out more about the art and the influence of Matisse, Picasso, Dali and Warhol, then go online to bbc.co.uk/